Henry Howard Molyneux Herbert, 4th Earl of Carnarvon PCDLFRSFSA, June 24, 1831, June 29, 1890, known as Lord Porchester from 1833 to 1849, was a British politician and a leading member of the Conservative Party. He was twice Secretary of State for the Colonies and also served as Lord Lieutenant of Ireland. Background and education: born at Grosvenor Square, London, Carnarvon was the eldest son of Henry Herbert, 3rd Earl of Carnarvon, by his wife Henrietta Anna, daughter of Lord Henry Howard Molyneux Howard. The Honourable Auberon Herbert was his younger brother. He was educated at Eton and Christ Church, Oxford. In 1849 he succeeded his father in the earldom. His nickname was Twitters, apparently on account of his nervous tics and twitchy behaviour. Political career: Carnarvon served under Lord Derby, as Under-Secretary of State for the Colonies from 1858 to 1859. In 1863 he worked on penal reform. Under the influence of Joshua Jebb he saw the gaols, jail being the British official spelling of jail, with the population including prisoners before any trial, as numerically more significant than the system of prisons for convicts. He was himself a magistrate, and campaigned for the conditions of confinement to be made less comfortable, with more severe regimes on labor and diet. He also wished to see a national system that was more uniform. In response, he was asked to run a House of Lords committee, which sat from February 1863. It drafted a report, and a Gaol Bill was brought in. During 1864, it was, however, lost amid opposition. The Prisons Act 1866, passed by Parliament during 1865, saw Carnarvon's main ideas implemented, though with detailed amendments. In 1866 Carnarvon was sworn of the Privy Council and appointed Secretary of State for the Colonies by Derby. In 1867 he introduced the British North America Act, which conferred self-government on Ontario, Canada, and effectively created a confederation. Later that year, he resigned, along with Lord Cranborne and Jonathan Peel, in protest against Benjamin Disraeli's Reform Bill to enfranchise the working classes. Returning to the office of the British Colonial Secretary in 1874, he submitted a set of proposals, the Carnarvon Terms, to settle the dispute between British Columbia and Canada over the construction of the Transcontinental Railroad and the Vancouver Island Railroad and Train Bridge. Vancouver Island had been promised a rail link as a condition for its entry into British North America Confederation. In the same year, he set in motion plans to impose the same system of confederation that he had applied in Canada, on the various states of Southern Africa. The situation in Southern Africa was vastly different, not least in that several of its states were still independent, and so required military conquest before being confederated. The Confederation plan was also highly unpopular among ordinary Southern Africans. The Prime Minister of the Cape Colony, by far the largest and most influential state in Southern Africa, firmly rejected confederation under Britain, saying that it was not a model that was applicable to the diverse region, and that conflict would result from outside involvement in Southern Africa at a time when state relations were particularly sensitive. The Liberal Cape government also objected to the plan for ideological concerns. Its formal response, conveyed to London via Sir Henry Berkeley, had been that any federation with the illiberal Boer republics would compromise the rights and franchise of the Cape's black citizens, and was therefore unacceptable. Other regional governments refused even to discuss the idea. Overall, The opinion of the governments of the Cape and its neighbors was that the proposals for confederation should emanate from the communities to be affected, and not be pressed upon them from outside. Lord Carnarvon believed that the continued existence of independent African states posed an ever-present threat of a general and simultaneous rising of Kafferdom against white civilization. He thus decided to force the pace, endeavoring to give South Africa not what it wanted, but what he considered it ought to want. He sent administrators, such as Theophilus Shepstone and Bartle Frere, to southern Africa to implement his system of confederation. Shepstone invaded and annexed the Transvaal in 1877, while Bartle Frere, as the new High Commissioner, led imperial troops against the last independent Xhosa in the Ninth Frontier War. Carnarvon then used the rising unrest to suspend the natal constitution, while Bartle Frere overthrew the elected Cape government, and then moved to invade the independent Zulu kingdom. However, the Confederation scheme collapsed as predicted, leaving a trail of wars across southern Africa. Humiliating defeats also followed at Isandlwana and Majuba Hill. Of the resultant wars, the disastrous invasion of Zululand ended in annexation, but the First Anglo-Boer War of 1880 had even more far-reaching consequences for the subcontinent. Francis Reginald Statham, editor of the Natal Witness in the 1870s, famously summed up the local reaction to Carnarvon's plan for the region. He, Carnarvon, thought it no harm to adopt this machinery, Canadian Confederation system, just as it stood, even down to the numbering and arrangement of the sections and subsections, and present it to the astonished South Africans as a got to go before them. It was as if your tailor should say, "Here is a coat, I did not make it, but I stole it ready-made out of a railway cloakroom. I don't know whether you want a coat or not, but you will be kind enough to put this on, and fit yourself to it. If it should happen to be too long in the sleeves, or ridiculously short in the back, I may be able to shift a button a few inches, and I am at least unalterably determined that my name shall be stamped on the loop you hang it up by." The Confederation idea was dropped when Carnarvon resigned in 1878, in opposition to Disraeli's policy on the Eastern Question, but the bitter conflicts caused by Carnarvon's policy continued, culminating eventually in the Anglo-Boer War and the ongoing divisions in South African society. On his party's return to power in 1885, Carnarvon became Lord Lieutenant of Ireland. His short period of office, memorable only for a conflict on a question of personal veracity between himself and Charles Stewart Parnell, as to his negotiations with the latter in respect of Home Rule, was terminated by another premature resignation. He never returned to office.